Responding to Adonai's calling. Genesis chapter 12 verses 1 to 13 verse 18, Joshua chapter 24 verses 3 to 18 and Hebrews chapter 11 verses 1 to 10. Introduction. What is calling? Have you ever thought about God's calling on your life? How did you respond? Now after the rebellion of man, again through the Tower of Babel and making name for themselves, Adonai chose one man from the line of Shem to show his plan. So what's the plan of Adonai? He knew that the heart of men is evil and will continue in wickedness, so he wants to choose a people to separate from it. Adonai hates syncretism, and that's why he called Abraham. His calling was very special. Out of a wicked and rebellious world, Adonai called him to be a great nation, but not only a great nation, but a separate nation for Adonai. How did Abram respond to the calling of Adonai? First, he left his country. Abram lived in a city named Ur, and the people of the land worshipped idols. What Adonai asked Abram to do was very difficult. He wants Abram to just depend on him. He will be the one to provide all that he needs, and as we can see in chapter 13 verse 2 that he was rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. Second, Abram respond to the calling of Adonai with faith. In Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8 it says, "By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going." Abram believed and he followed God. But it wasn't easy when he went to Egypt because of famine. He lied just to save himself, but his wife Sarah was in danger. Still holding to Adonai's promise, he did not return to Ur. After the situation in Egypt, he journeyed back to where he must go and regain his faith. Now he went to Bethel, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first, and he called on the name of Adonai. He was aware of his failure in Egypt. In chapter 13, Abram returned to the land Adonai gave him, but before that, he made a decision to separate with his nephew Lot. He chose Canaan because he knew it was the promised land. The lesson here is very obvious. Lot used his sight in choosing, but Abram by faith. The land he chose was the land of Adonai, and he said to Abram in verse 14 to 17, "Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are, for all the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you." Adonai repeated the phrase, "I give it to you," twice as an assurance that he is very true to his promise with Abram. Again, Abram built an altar and worshipped Adonai as a result of believing in the promises of Adonai, and that is faith. Third, Abram responded to the calling of Adonai with courage because he was already 75 years old. He was courageous because he was seeking Adonai's promise. In Hebrews chapter 11 verses 9 and 10 it says, "He dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise, for he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God." Acting to Adonai's instruction in spite of his age was a sign of courage on the part of Abram, and he is a testimony for all those who have the courage to obey Adonai. In Haftarah, Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel together with the elders, heads, judges, officers, and they went to Shechem to present themselves before Adonai. The question is, why in Shechem, also known as Canaanite city? It was the place that Adonai made a promise with Abraham that he would give that land to his descendants. Joshua reviewed the history and the things that Adonai did for them. Also he called Israel to make a choice whom they will serve, whether Adonai or idols. Joshua modeled himself and his family to serve Adonai, and the people of Israel also committed themselves to serve him. In verse 17, we can see that Israel recalls how Adonai brought them out of the land of Egypt to show that he has been faithful to them. In apostolic portion, chapter 11 of Hebrews shows the events in the lives of Bible characters who certified of living by faith. As we can see, after Abel and Enoch's faithfulness, the author said in verse 6, "Without faith it is impossible to please God, for he who comes to him must believe that he is and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Then in verse 8 to 10, it's all about the faith of Abraham. The bottom line of our apostolic is that these Bible characters died in faith, not having received the promises, but only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth, and again that is faith. The connection of our parasha is very obvious and it's about faithfulness. In Torah, Abram being faithful followed Adonai's instruction to leave his country and go to the land of Canaan without seeing and knowing the place. In Haftarah, Joshua modeled himself as a faithful leader of Israel by saying he and his family will serve Adonai, and the people of Israel also committed themselves. In Apostolic, the author of Hebrews shows us the description of Bible characters who lived and died in faith. Back to my introduction. If there is one call that you need to answer with sincerity, it would be Yeshua's call to follow him. Just like Abraham and other Bible characters, you can go through it because Adonai will give you strength and he will provide your needs. You are making the best decision of your life if you decide to respond in his calling. Remember, it's a great privilege to serve our Master Yeshua. Shabbat Shalom.